Hey everybody, I'm Jody Vance.
And I'm George Affleck.
And it's time for
UnSpun, the home edition with school and parenting and work and everything else.
so great. It's great.
I have so many responsibilities these days. We've got the structure for my son. He has to get up at a certain time because the other two kids are grown. They're up, they're done in
Yep.
school. So he's 11, 12 now in grade 6. So we're kind of setting up our own system until we find out what's really going on from the schools. We're still waiting for our school to give us some kind of guidelines. But so we're doing homeschooling and math at 9, reading at 10, writing at 11. Lunch, and if he doesn't whine and complain, he gets to play games at lunch. If he whines, no games. And then 1 o'clock is report writing, and then 2 o'clock is music, and then 3 o'clock is he's done, and then he can do games for an hour and a half, and that's if he doesn't complain and whine. And then if he doesn't complain and whine the whole day, he gets a star on a big board that we've created.
I like this, George.
Yes, structure.
That's and difficult to maintain. Like that's work.
Yeah.
You're doing more work than I. Okay, so here's kind of mine.
Yes.
We have an allotted time. We get up and watch the Prime Minister speak. We'll get back to that in a second. And then, so that's 8:15. And then we get some downtime until it's breakfast. We're out the door by 9:30 to go and do a minimum 5K. We got to exercise, and then we come home and we stay home. And what we do once we're home is we do a little bit of home economics. We plan what's for dinner. We do a little bit of social studies and communications, because he's allowed to speak with his friends and constructively.
Yeah. Right.
Look at.
Oh, see.
Somehow, welcome to.
I'm sure my door will open as well. What's happening in here? What's going on?
Like, they're gone now. They're gone. I've told them I need an hour. So, but we've done, like, I'm trying to work in things that are math-like, or, he has chores now. This kid has never vacuumed this entire house, and he does it every other day. He does the bathrooms every other day. And I mean, like, you're learning how to clean a bathroom, man. This is not just mailing it in. And for me, similarly to you, then you get your screen time, because the kids do communicate. We're doing Zoom and Hangouts and whatever, house party or whatever. House party. It's like George Strombolopoulos is in the house. I'm like, well, come in. But they've been doing that forever, just doing it via their Xbox, and so I allow him that communication time as well. And then we have every streaming.
Sometimes there's some screaming going on.
Streaming services known to man. We have all of them.
Yeah, we have all of them too. Yep.
I didn't have any other than Netflix until last week.
Yeah, it's and that really slows down the internet. Which, if we have glitches today, it's probably because neighbors are all watching Netflix.
True.
Yeah,
there we go.
There you go. Turn all devices off.
Everything's off.
Anyways.
Okay, so let's talk. I want to talk today, if we may,
quarantine. Yeah,
because we're in our own minds, and we're very lucky. We're fortunate as to where we live. So let's start sort of internationally speaking.
Weird light going on here. Sorry. Go ahead. Yes. I don't know where.
Which has happened?
There's light coming out. You can't see this if you're listening, but there's some weird. It looks like, what is that? There's some bright light.
Do you have a window?
No, but I don't know what's going on.
Something's reflecting off of something.
Something somewhere. Anyways, it looks like I'll move this way. There we go. Sorry, everybody.
It's up. Now you have to log on. You go to the orca.ca and you can watch the podcast. But we're glad you're tuning in here, because we do have some significant things to get to. Obviously, COVID-19 is our top story and our major focus again for today, but we promise there's some positives to be found here. So stay tuned for that. But we want to talk tone. From an international perspective, George, when we first connected this morning, you were like, what about Sweden? And I'm like, holy crap, what have we learned in Italy? Like, let's break it down. What's happening in Sweden?
Sweden has, kind of like Britain had initially done, taken a laissez-faire approach. It's like, everybody just calm down. We got this. Don't worry about social, distance or even isolation. Just kind of do your thing. We're going to get sick. It's the way it goes, but we can handle it. And so now they're predicting that Sweden will have half of Sweden is going to get sick, get the virus before the end of April. These are some of the numbers that are coming out now. And they still don't seem to be, they still are going, it's all right, stay calm, we got this. It's a
Clearly,
totally
they don't work in
different
an
approach.
emergency room, though, George. I mean,
Well,
like, clearly
they are saying that their ERs can handle the numbers. It's an interesting. I tweeted this, an interesting science and social experience, experiment to watch.
yeah.
It's scary for all of us who are clearly doing something different. But obviously, if it works, they won't have the second and third waves that we all probably will see here. Unless we get the vaccine. Right. So it's Sweden also didn't go in the Second World War, so they have a different approach to the way they govern, and it's a lot of people are going to die. Obviously, they have a quite they have a lot of seniors in Sweden. So I don't know. It's interesting to watch, and obviously then they don't have the impact that we're facing financially. They're not having to, fund businesses the way we're seeing that happen here and everywhere else. So
we'll get back to that.
Approach.
I want to dive deeper into what's happening here, but first I want to pivot to Italy, because we are seeing some things loosen slightly there. I've been watching reports out of Italy, but also I think it was CNN, but it might have been CBC. I'm not sure. So credit either, but something moved on Twitter that was lessons we learned from Italy. And I thought, oh, I'm interested in that. And in reading this article, one of the things that they said that they did wrong was not react quickly enough. I think that's fair to say that most Western countries have not reacted quickly enough. But then when they did react, they put patients who had tested positive or were certainly sick with what appeared to be COVID-19 in the general population of a hospital, which is not happening here in Canada. It's very separate. But they put them all sort of mixed together. And then once it started to get super, super packed with people who were positive with COVID-19, they took those people and used the care homes as auxiliary. So what they said in this article was, it was like throwing a lit match into a haystack. And thus the level of, the most vulnerable people, right? Which is, they're saying that an entire generation of Italians is gone.
It's crazy. And so that's a different approach. You talk about how you as a government make decisions, and you look at, the Sweden example. Denmark was the first one to lock down. We hear a lot from Shane Woodford, who used to be at NL up in Kamloops, and NW before, now living in Denmark. You see Britain, who pivoted or flip-flopped or whatever on their approach, which was first more like Sweden's, and now they're
and
hardcore,
the US.
And their own prime minister now has COVID-19. And you look at what's going on in Spain and France. It's and then Russia. And then we're hearing that we don't know the true numbers from China. We're seeing reports that they underreported the numbers. So what's real? Russia probably will do the same thing. They won't report the real numbers. What's going on there? We don't know. This kind of way governments are approaching this process about how do we keep people calm. The toilet paper wars kind of thing could easily extrapolate into more chaos. If you go to the grocery stores now, you are seeing, I think, some limited quantities of certain. The other day we went to 3 stores and there was no milk at all. I've never seen that before. So we had to, by the end of the day, we found, I think one store finally found some at the end of the day. That kind of stuff, you'd never see that before here. And so that's the kind of stuff that, where a government needs to keep you calm. I know that the provincial government here is talking about the whole, flow of goods and how that will work. But, keeping people calm, depending on your approach is, the approach is one thing, keeping people calm is another. And that's all about spin. That's all about messaging. That's all about leadership. And so it's interesting to see each one of these countries and their leaders and their medical leaders and how they approach the messaging and how they, United States, is a perfect example. Trump has completely flip-flopped. Anybody has his main medical guy, who's
Dr. Fauci,
who at first was kind of being pushed to the side. He was getting a lot of trouble. Then he disappeared for a few days because Trump was like, and now Trump is totally embracing him. And I was watching a press conference this week where Trump was asked how many people, in the horrible press conference where they talked about that there's going to be 100 to 200,000 or 240,000 people who die. This good news is 100,000. That's the good news. But they did, when they asked, can you, Mr. President, tell us how many people you think will die? And he said, well, I'm going to let Fauci talk about that. He refused to say the numbers in his press conference himself because that's on you, right? When
that's
you
your
say those
soundbite.
words, that's the soundbite.
Yeah.
So now he's using him as a tool to message the stuff he doesn't want to be stuck with.
Did you hear that Dr. Fauci now needs personal security?
I saw that question that they asked, and no doubt. I mean, America's still split on this issue. You look what's happening in Florida. You look at the governor of, was it I forget which governor, who didn't understand that you could actually contract this.
Georgia. Asymptomatic.
He did not know that.
Didn't know until last night. Last night.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like we all did.
Yeah, there are people who are still living in ignorance. I think people who still have the symptoms and are going out. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
By the time they understand, what they're doing, it will be too late. And the thing there is that selfish, likely younger individual who isn't engaged and not consuming news as they perhaps should, in some semblance of diversity, like not just get it from one news source that may not be reputable. And then they bring that home and they pass it on to somebody with a compromised immune system or somebody who is an elder who needs, like what we're doing right now in isolating ourselves and not seeing, like we don't see anybody. Nobody.
I have 3 kids. The 2 older ones I don't get to see because we had to decide because they're from a different marriage, and so we have to. So now I'm like, I don't get to see. We see them online, and then we're going to go on Sunday to the beach as long as it's we're 6 feet apart because they're still out there. My son works in a pet food store. He's part of that whole work world that has to be out there working.
Has to.
Stocking shelves.
What would we do without him?
Yeah, I mean, dog owners obviously in Vancouver, they would be rabid.
That's me.
So that makes him very, very susceptible, and we have to be careful. And so it's interesting to see it. So that whole calming and messaging.
Kind of feel like we're being trained, right, George? Like I kind of feel like at first it was like a jolt. Everybody go home. What? And then it was like, go home, stay home. We're in this together. Okay. We're going home. We're staying home. We're in it together. And then people are just getting laid off left, right, and center, including in my household. Brian, because he's in the restaurant industry, was basically sent home for your own safety. And the next day was laid off. And so it's like, okay, we got you. We're going to take care of you. It's not going to be a problem. We got you. You're laid off. We're going to take care of you. If you're an independent worker, we got you. If you can't make your mortgage, we're going to put that on pause. If you can't pay your rent, we're going to all those. And we're like, okay. And now we're 3 weeks into it, and the messaging is still the same. And there's starting to be this underlying frustration along with the fear of, like, I'm thinking about people who literally don't have an extra month. Never mind the 3 month that's suggested that you have in your savings, right? Like, what? I feel like something needs to happen here.
And it's very kind of sporadic and piecemeal. And it's, I look at, for my own personal experience, because I'm a business owner, and that's why I have staff. But I also was in government, so I kind of get how fast government moves, which is not fast. And so you have to kind of accept the fact that, okay, they are creating policy on the fly here. That's significant policy. That's challenging. Right. And actually, Kirk LaPointe wrote a bit about that in his column this week in BIV. So I saw that. Recommend you look at that.
It's a good one.
But, you know, don't start announcing things and then, because immediately we're all going, okay, how's that work? So for example, there are a couple ones that work great. The payroll, the 10%, that was easy. Literally, my accountant just went on there, clicked 10% payroll on, sorry, I'm getting my little thingamajig here, talking to me in my ear. Siri, leave me alone. So
glitchy, so glitchy today, George.
I know this.
But I get what you're saying. So your accountant just clicked, and then there you go.
Yeah, and then there was like the bank one, the $40,000 loan. So I thought, oh well, I'll check into that. Literally, I email my bank, the person who deals with my business, and I say, what's the deal with this? How do you contacted me? Now you're in line. That's all it takes as far as we know. We're still trying to learn, but here's the work works. So there's some clarity on that one, and it's in the hands of my bank, really, which is in some ways good. But then on the mortgage side, I know that you've had frustrations on.
I'm coming to your bank when this is over, George. I'm leaving my bank of 37 years and I'm coming to your bank.
Yeah, because they've said no problem as of May that you're done.
I cannot,
6 months.
I cannot even articulate my disappointment. It's not even anger. I'm so disappointed because I've been such a loyal customer to this bank since I was 15 years old. I've been at the same branch, for goodness. I moved to Toronto for 9 years and I kept the branch because I knew the people, and I opened an account in Ontario, of course. I had a business account there, but I kept this active and I was engaged. And they've been great. Over the years, I've had, 5 different financial advisors because I feel like I trained them. My file's this thick. I called to say, you know what? I'd like to take my prime minister up on putting my mortgage on pause. And they said, here's a 1-800 number for you. And I said, no. And then they're like, yeah, and it's a really heavy call. So I called the 1-877 number. It doesn't even ring. It crashes. Like you can't even get in line. Like
there's nobody there really anymore.
There's no. And so I went online. They said, you can go online and click a thing and, you know, fill out in your online bank. Yes, click, do it. Yeah. Do you want help with that? I'm like, okay, you know, hopefully that doesn't hit my credit rating because my credit rating's great. I don't need help with my mortgage. I need you to pause my mortgage so that I might have the money that I would be putting into my mortgage for the next 6 months and maybe lend it to my friend who can't make rent or doesn't have groceries or whatever, or put it into my father who's in care, not subsidized care, by the way. That's $10,000 a month. Like there's a lot that, I mean, and I'm lucky. Like I'm very, very, very fortunate. I can't imagine somebody who is even 50% of where I'm at having this amount of stress on top of it. It's insanity. Sorry, I'm going off, but I'm coming.
No, that's okay. And the province, and again, there's announcements after announcements, and it's very confusing. I will give a shout out to the Burnaby Board of Trade. They've been doing some great whenever something gets announced, they send out a long email about all the things, so that they keep tracking of it all and links to stuff when they exist.
Brilliant.
There is no link to this thing yet, but there will be. We'll let you know. So shout out to those guys. But you know, so there's the personal stuff, which is stressful, and it's and then there's the business stuff, and the 75% thing is so confusing and so at this point we're going, what? Because you know, you're saying we're going to pay 75%, so you don't have to lay off anybody. Okay, great. When am I getting? How does that work? Well, there is no place the way it works yet. Okay, when will it work? Well, we don't know. In 3 weeks. Okay, and then okay, what do I do? I apply. Well, you have to have this criteria. Okay, and then once you
30% from last year to show 30%. This year, and what if you're?
And then at 6 weeks you'll get the money, and then you have to do this every month, and you're like, okay, but you know, most small business owners who have 5 to 10 staff, especially who are paying for their offices that are empty because they're working from home, but they're still trying to keep their business going. Like me, I still have all my staff. I'm paying them, but I'm not taking any. I'm taking zero salary right now. So it's because I want to keep my staff working. Because you know this will end. You have to keep my business going.
This is going to end. It's going to end.
I know, but
it's what it looks like when we're on the other side. Like, how much would it help you, George? How much for you in your business at Curve Communications? How much would it help you if you could say, my cost of my business space, my overhead cost is on pause while we are on stay-at-home orders? Like you don't even have to pay it back. Like it's just paused.
Well, I mean, as long as I mean, because I don't want to screw over some bunch of other people, suppliers or my rent owners. So there has to be a structure of how they're.
That's what I mean, though. But if it goes all the way up the food chain and everything goes on pause, instead of having to hire a bunch of people to create a bunch of websites, to do a bunch of links, to get out a bunch of paperwork, to put a bunch of policy, to do the thing and click it on it, have it crash and try and figure out and who's doing the math on whether the 30% is that this year's like.
And I thought that I think there should be an easier way, and I think that you have to trust us. The Prime Minister's comment in his re-announcement about the 75% thing, that we will find you, we will hunt you down, and we will kill you.
If you take advantage, I think it could have just said.
His best Liam Neeson there. It's like, okay. But, seriously, we need to deal with this to keep our staff going.
Yeah.
Can you make this easier for us? Trust us, and there will, of course, we understand there will be spot checks, or if CRA has access to all of our financials. We submit our annual financials. They can see how much money I made last year, so they can come after me afterwards. But just let me deal with it and trust me that why do I have to submit paperwork? CRA knows how much I made last year as a business. They'll know how much I made next year. Unless I'm not filing my taxes, which of course I make a profit, so I pay taxes every year. So as a company, there is a system in place called the CRA, the Canadian Revenue. It's like it exists. You don't have to worry about us. Otherwise, you're just worrying about all businesses being dishonest, which is not cool at this time. We're all struggling. Don't patronize me and tell me I don't know that I'm going to be dishonest. Come on, we're trying to run our businesses here. And
we're in this together. There are going to be people that try and scam and game the system. It's not average Joe Canadian. And you know what? And you can feel it in my voice. I can feel it in your voice. There's frustration and fear within this because we've never been through anything even remotely close to this. It's a pandemic, for crying out loud. And that we have the re-announcement of a re-announcement with kind of a confusing, we're not really sure, with a little bit of a, like, I find myself more and more, like, I want to be as proud as I am ongoing for my country. I want us to all be together, united, nonpartisan.
Yeah.
It's not about politics. It's about people. It's about the human side. Mm-hmm. And I can feel the frustration ramping up. You can see Andrew Scheer. I mean, I just, everything I can take to not tweet back at him, or the Brett Wilsons of the world or whatever. People who want to fight right now. I don't want to fight right now. But I'm starting to get frustrated.
Yes. And then that leads to anger. I think that's we're going back to the beginning conversation about tone. And it's really important that you don't patronize me, and you don't, that you don't create this kind of nanny state mentality of trying to, micromanage my business. This is not. Certainly, some business owners and entrepreneurs tend to be. They want freedom. They quite often are anti-government. They like less government, but they understand, and we are all in this together, and we understand this is going to cost us a lot of money in the future. We're going to be paying this debt for a long time. We get that. But right now it's about survival, and we need to move faster on this stuff. But even us talking about this is bordering on what people will say we're being mean, and that you're being anti all in this together by talking.
I had somebody called me a sniveling person, like that I really need to toughen up. Somebody on Twitter, because I was actually on Jordan Bateman. He had a thread on what the frustrations are with regard to the announcements that are happening and the inaction that's happening. And I was like, I endorse this thread. And this woman was like, stop your sniveling and suck it up. And I'm like, pretty sure we're not sniveling here. And perhaps there needs to be a conversation, because I put out that tweet a few days ago, and not that Jagmeet Singh is listening to my Twitter, but I put out there, like, can't we just pause mortgages? Can't it just be a directive from government to just say, pause all the mortgages and have a 1-800 line for people who would like to continue paying? Mm-hmm. I'd like to continue. I can afford to continue paying my mortgage. I don't want any, I don't need it.
What they're doing.
Right. Yeah. And why don't we just do that? Why don't we just do that?
Yeah, because there's lots of people who are still getting paid. I mean, if you work in the healthcare sector, or certainly if you work in some hospitals, actually some private, actually we should be doctors. Surprisingly, there's a lot of healthcare workers who are getting laid off right now, by the way, because of it's quiet in a lot of these places in BC, the private clinics and the and even
no one's getting an MRI right now.
Your GP is not taking any clients right now, or any patients. Anyways, but there are people who make a regular income right now who don't want to pause their mortgages. They're like, no, I'm good. I don't want to. 6 months. So yeah, I agree. Like, let's flip that on its head and say we don't want it. But anyways, here we are.
Let's flip some other stuff around, because what flips you more than actually watching a Doug Ford press conference and thinking, way to go?
I mean, it's the most surprising turnaround of a personality and a public relations shit show that it was before, as far as that he could not get any positive PR before, for the most part. Everything he did was, everybody, oh, he's so evil. And now everybody's going, what happened to Doug Ford? Like, what the heck? But he's an intuitive politician. He is a grassroots kind of guy, and Trump is a bit slow to the game, but Trump has that grassroots thing, and that's what he's doing as well, but not as effectively as Doug Ford, where he's going, I got to get on the wave of this, and I don't think he's doing it, like, he's not literally going, I got to change my image or something. He knows what the people want and what the majority of people want, and generally, if you want to keep winning, you have to find a way. Again, we talked about this before, that mushy middle. Like, if you're on the right side of the spectrum or you're on the left side of the spectrum, you still need, in most places in Canada, if you don't have the middle on your side, you won't win. So he knows that he's got to keep that mushy middle in Ontario happy, otherwise the Liberals and NDP get it. And so,
but the shift in how he is addressing certain slices of society, it's so different. Like, it feels like I'm watching a different person. So
he was on the senior stuff, right? The funding for seniors housing, and like the first out of the gate, we just had announcements today from the BC's government that were similar to Ontario's that were several weeks ago. So which is important, taking care of our most vulnerable seniors right now. Like, subsidies are important for them. Let's talk about tone. I'm still, every day I listen to Dr. Bonnie Henry, and even when she says we're learning every day, we're learning, we're
she's calm, but she's also able to take the, yes, we said this 2 days ago, and now we've learned that isn't exact, and we learned from that, and therefore we're this. But what we can come back to is wash your hands, stay at home, stay at least 6 feet away from everybody else, or 2 meters, depending on your, and help those who aren't getting that message to hear the message, because this is a watershed moment. Can
we stop asking her the mask question, please? Please, for God's sakes.
Read Ian Young's Vancouver blog. Ian Young, who is the Vancouver columnist, or stationed columnist for the South China Morning Post. Right. He's got a blog called Vancouver, and numerous columns have been written about masks, because for the longest time, wearing a mask in the Asian community was like scoffed by others outside of the Asian community. And there's a really great explanation for that. And Ian is very poignant. And he predicts that all of us will be wearing masks eventually for whatever protective or reduced spread reason. But right now, but that's what he says. But that's the point, George, is right now there aren't enough. And when 20% of healthcare workers are going down sick with this, and we really need them, they need the masks. We need to stay home. They need the masks.
Stay home and stay away from each other. So, and that
or cut up a bra and put some elastic on it. Put the cup on your face. Go.
Okay, that's an.
Have you seen that DIY? It's very funny.
I saw something in England. The guy for underwear he did.
He did. Oh yeah. Oh, that was just so bad. Whatever works. But Dr. Bonnie Henry.
Distancing. Yeah, sorry, she's doing great, but I think people stop asking that question and when the masks become available, sure, great, go to town. But really, just stay away from each other. Stay in your zone until Dr. B tells us that we're free to do whatever. But I think though we still need to get out. She said it's okay to get outside and get some fresh air. That it's okay. You walk your dog, I go for runs. So when I go for a run, I live downtown. Seawall's right over there. I go for a run, but I'm very careful. I literally up on the grass. I'm like, it's almost risky because I'm like, I'm gonna wipe out here. But I'm trying to keep my distance, because when you're running, you have to be careful because you're breathing heavier in that air. I think one of the things I always point out when I'm walking, people who smoke, which I hate, and that
me too.
That you're just like, ugh. Or people who have a lot of cologne or perfume on, you're like, phew. That is that when I think about it, that's the distance that you have to be away from a smoker or a person with really heavy cologne on is a distance you should be away from them now at all. Because to me, I'm thinking that fume is coming from that body.
I never thought of it that way. That's very astute. Yeah.
Very much.
So when you're talking about the seawall, because I've been doing, and I've got friends that I post my Apple Watch, like I try and get a certain number of steps in a day, and then I shut it down. Right? I got to get some exercise. Then I come home, and I've only got a small space to live in, but I don't worry about not moving enough because I've gotten it done first thing in the morning before everybody's out and about. But I was on the seawall. I was going from Kitsilano around the Cambie Street Bridge and back across the Broad Street Bridge and home. So it was about 14K. And it got to the point where I felt like I was on the midway at the Peony.
Yeah, in some spots, and there's just no escape. You can't get it. You can't get up.
On the Yaletown side, on the north side of the seawall, in between Cambie and Granville, is like, and a lot of people, frankly, sitting around chatting, having a coffee. I'm like, what are you guys doing? Playing basketball?
Which brings me to, but then we have, and Calgary's done this, where they've opened up streets for walking. So one of my pet peeves that I have, you and I been going back and forth this week, is about this boarding up of the stores, mostly on Robinson Street now, Vancouver, maybe in other places in BC. I don't know. This drives me crazy, and there's no reason for it. There's no data that proves that there's going to be a lot of break-ins. My office is on Broadway. None of the stores on Broadway where I am are boarded up. Why Robson? Because they're high-end stores. It's ridiculous. There's no need for it. The goods aren't even in the stores anymore. I get those boards off. They're not permitted anyways. And if you want to help me as a resident downtown, or anybody, open up some of these streets so that we can get outside and get fresh air, and give us enough space so we can have that distancing from each other. Obviously we can't get it on the seawall. So where can we get it? On the larger streets that are clearly not being used right now. There's no buses on them. There's no cars. There's nothing. So
they should do like a parade route. There should be like that. Maybe an idea for City Hall. Maybe here, City Hall. Here's one for you. Put the communications people.
Rad Dad.
Cheers. Rad Dad, feminist. Rad Dad and feminist. But let's make like a parade route through downtown on streets that are clearly not busy at all,
Yep.
and nobody's parking on, and make it like the route through IKEA. Let's put arrows,
So
and you just only go one direction, so nobody's running at you, and no one's gonna be dodging. You're all going almost like you're
hockey stick distance apart.
Hockey stick. You do the little chevrons that they have.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But it would work. If we're going to do this for a couple of months, and it's going to be
sponsored by IKEA.
We could sponsor Sweden. They'd love it.
Bring
Get
it
out
full
and
circle.
keep things normal.
Full circle today.
And you know what? You could get businesses that could put up banners along the way, and people would see
Remember us when this is over.
Right. We're working hard for you, or we're doing free meals for the healthcare workers, which, by the way, I think is an awesome initiative. Yep. I'm seeing a Tractor, the salad spot is creating meals. I've got a friend who runs what was a catering business in Ontario, Taste Culinary. They used to do school lunches and business catering and whatnot. And of course, all of that shut down because everybody went home. So they went, okay, well, we're going to take our commissary and turn it into making 3 different options, like vegetarian, vegan, and meat option, whatever, for people to take home and heat and eat. So for, if you aren't culinarily inclined, you can pick up stuff and drop it off at your elder's front door and say,
I have
you're
friends
done.
who've never cooked in their homes. I had a friend, she turned on her oven and her dog started freaking out because he didn't know what it was.
I can one up you on that one. Because my girlfriend, Kathy, she'd love that she gets name recognition for this. She'd lived in her house that they had built. This is 10 years ago now, but they'd lived there for almost 3 years. Yeah. And it was like, we're going to roast a chicken. And she's like, oh yeah, okay. I don't know how to turn my oven on. And I'm like, really? And it's this beautiful German oven, probably a $10,000 piece of, it's crazy beautiful. It's designer. I opened the oven, instructions,
still in there.
Plastic, still inside the oven.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
2.5 years. I can't. Let's talk a little bit about that sort of street level as well, because you were telling me earlier about somebody in your building complex who...
Yeah, this is something I think we all are thinking about now because more and more people get this. So we're starting to know people who have it, or somebody in your building if you live in a high-rise downtown. So we had somebody, and they put a poster up saying that somebody had contracted COVID-19 in our building, and they had gone to the hospital on Sunday, and we don't know, they obviously probably were in the elevator at some point and pushed a button when they had this, before they know they had it, because we all know you don't know you have it until it's probably too late and you spread it. And so it makes you start questioning, I've got the kids, I'm going, how much information do I share with my kid? And, what do we start thinking about for myself? And did I go in the elevator those days? What did I do? Did I push the button? You start really your brain starts spinning around like, did I see that person on the street? Who was it? What person was it? Oh my God. It's really something that and it's hard almost not to kind of panic a little bit when you think about it. Okay, did I push lobby that day? And so it's really interesting. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands. Every single
time. Don't touch anything. My elbows become very effective.
But make sure you wash. Make sure you wash your stuff.
You're supposed to take all your clothes off when you come in. It's like detox when you come inside our house.
Yeah.
Everything goes into the laundry, and
we've got a couple of friends who have tested positive and have been very public about it. Kyla Lee, the lawyer. She's been really documenting it on Twitter. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And my good friend Pam Stevens, you might remember Pam from years and years and years doing traffic at NW. She was the eye in the sky. And she has been traveling the world, and she was almost stuck in Bali. She's an international tour guide, and sort of the glamping, camping sort of back roads tour. And she came home, and she lives up in the interior near Trail. And she was like, just sitting here in my isolation. And then 2 days later, she's like, actually, it's more like coronavirus quarantine. So she's sort of documenting that there she is, she's got it. And it's like, what does that mean, for her family? And for me, that's the big thing for me is I'm not as, and I should probably be more worried about me getting it. The fact that every physician tells me it's not coming for my child actually gives me great calm. But for me, I've got 3 parents, my mom, my stepdad, and my dad, who all have underlying issues. Mm-hmm. All 3 of them are cancer survivors. And my dad is in late stages Alzheimer's in a care home. So I need to protect that. Yeah. So my Petri dish is that big. Like it's just, it's like, if you're
nobody,
flexibility
there.
No, yeah. I had a friend, we have a friend who was like, I'm going through the thing in my life and I need support. Can I come over? And we're like, no, you need to find somewhere to go for 14 days by yourself before you can come over here.
Yeah. Brutal. I've heard like stories about roommates when your roommate won't, these people who have roommates and the roommate won't, they keep going out and you're like, hey, roommate, who I'm just renting a place with, how do you?
Wow. Oh, that's a thing.
Yeah. How do you deal with that when your roommate won't comply? They're just
I changed the locks. I would.
Well,
that's brutal.
You could call them this week, didn't you?
You go. Look at you.
The first one relates to what you were just saying, because that first, the people working in these care homes, when we talk about front line, I know the hospital people have been doing, have been doing yeoman's work, but the people in these care homes going through, there's so many of them now that are being hit by this. That is stressful.
There's so many hourly workers that work in those care homes, the janitors, the cooks, the kind people that are making sure that my dad is okay right now. Like it but full disclosure, George, because we are unspun, so I don't want to have any spin on this. You actually pointed out to me, because we've been talking about the 7 p.m. and making noise, and Daniel Fontaine, who is a good friend of both of ours, and I've interviewed him many times, head of the BC Care Providers, so intuitive and such an amazing individual. And Daniel and you talking, and then you're like, hey, that's probably maybe a good idea for you. And I was like, oh, and then I went away and I wrote the column and then I put it out there. So great team effort in putting this together, because it is a column that I've gotten more response from my inner circle and just a little bit out from sort of my community, people that I'm like, I didn't even know you read the Orca. I'm so glad you did. Sign up for the Fin. But they're reading it and they're feeling it. And now my neighborhood that a week ago was silent at 7, yours in Yaletown you were sending out the videos. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. I
love my neighborhood now. It sounds like New Year's Eve at midnight, or the Canucks just scored in game 7 to win the Stanley Cup, one or the other. It's pretty amazing.
It has not happened.
It has not happened. So that's one of my 2 columns. And the other one is sort of looking at some of the things that we're learning here that might be able to stick post-pandemic. So, have a read of those at theorca.ca.
Thinking about life afterwards is something, it's going to be a different place as a business owner, as people. It's going to be interesting. And I think both columns are worth a read for sure.
Thanks, buddy. Isn't it weird watching movies or television shows where people are like walking in big groups? I just watched The Morning Show on Apple TV.
Get away from each other.
Oh my God, New York City's stressing me out. So big hearts and ups to those who are in isolation and maybe those who are by themselves in isolation right now. We're so lucky we have our family, as much as we're all on top of each other. I can't imagine being fully alone and facing a couple of months of fully alone. So I want to reiterate here that my DMs are always open at Jody Vance on Twitter. Just reach out. I'll chat with you. And at George _ Affleck. He doesn't want to talk to you though.
That's all open.
I know they're open. I'm just kidding, buddy. Anyway,
I'm very social in life, and that idea that you just mentioned, being alone in a home, that's my worst nightmare. Like I need people around me all the time. So
I think that might be next week's column. How we can connect with people who maybe don't have anybody to try and connect with. Maybe some ideas on how to create some social circles, right?
I like it.
We got to start somewhere, man. But we'll keep doing this.
There.
See ya.
See ya.